I wonder if you've ever had one of those conversations. You know the ones I mean, right? One of those conversations which you might not have realized at the time, but as you reflect on them, they somewhat help to change or indeed form the trajectory of your life. I can think of a few conversations like that I've had. Some difficult, some freeing, others where it was as though a light bulb came on and suddenly everything started to make sense. Yesterday, as we began our journey together considering the 7 sayings of Jesus on the cross, we considered how he prayed for the forgiveness of those who relentlessly mocked him and how he made intercession for them. As he hung between 2 criminals and Roman soldiers cast lots for his garments, he prayed aloud for them. And today, as the story unfolds further, the gospel writer, Dr. Luke, makes us privy, gives us insight to a conversation which would take place following this prayer. Let me read it to you now, also found in Luke 23. It says, one of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us. But the other criminal rebuked him. Don't you fear God, he said, since you are under the same sentence. We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve, but this man has done nothing wrong. Then he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus answered him, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. Luke 23, 39-43. 2 men hanging either side, 2 very different outlooks, yet bonded together as criminals who were worthy of hanging on a Roman cross reserved for the worst of the worst. 2 men hanging either side, 2 very different outlooks, yet as it would transpire, 2 very different outcomes. Indeed, someone once wrote that one faith was saved on the cross that none might despair, and only one that none might presume. There's an old hymn which is still sung in many churches throughout the world named "To God Be the Glory." And there's a wee line tucked away in there that reads as follows. It reads, the vilest offender who truly believes that moment from Jesus a pardon receives. 2 men hanging either side, 2 very different outlooks which led to 2 very different outcomes. You see, whilst one mocked until the end, I often wonder if hearing that prayer of Father, forgive them, changed the heart of the other one. Did he realize in that moment that Jesus was in fact everything that he had claimed to be? That he was indeed the Messiah, that he was indeed the King of the Jews, but that his kingship was different, and that his kingdom was not of this world. This man, we call him the thief on the cross, had never been in a Bible study. He'd never been baptized. There's no evidence that he would have been able to articulate or even understood any of the key theological concepts. He didn't hold membership in a church. Yet in his deepest, darkest hour, his mouth confesses that Jesus is King. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Verse 42. He knows it to be true. Yet this interaction, this conversation would change the trajectory of his life forever. Not physically, for he would still die on the cross, but it would change the trajectory of his life for eternity. As Jesus answered him, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. Verse 43. Scottish pastor and theologian living in America, Alistair Begg, summed up this conversation than perhaps anybody I have ever heard try. Imagining what it must have been like when the thief on the cross arrived in paradise that day and is met by the welcoming party who inquire his credentials to be there. The thief simply replies, the man on the middle cross said I could come. The man on the middle cross said I could come. Salvation is found in Jesus Christ alone. Only He has the power to save. There's nothing that you can do to earn your way into heaven. This conversation with the two criminals on the crosses proved that. Both men were guilty of crimes which saw them placed on a cross reserved for the worst of criminals. Yet only the one who acknowledged Jesus as King inherited eternal life. The vilest offender who truly believes that moment from Jesus, a pardon receives. And to each one of us, that same pardon is offered. Perhaps this Holy Week, perhaps today, we might just have a conversation with Jesus, which would change the trajectory of our lives, both in the here and now, but also for all of eternity.